everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create, and today I'm here to continue working on our 8.5 by 10.5 landscape style mini album that's going to feature the Lost in Paradise collection from G45. So today the focus is going to be about getting all the customizations in for the interactive pieces in the album, because we've already finished the base of the album. The 4 pocket pages are in. So now what we're going to do is focus on getting the flaps and pockets and all the interactive pieces in place, getting ready for that paper to arrive. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sit down and I'm going to get started. And so we've got a couple of things on the first page. On page 1, you're going to need 2 flaps at 5.5 by 8, 5.5 by 8. Along the 5.5 inch side, you're going to score a 1/2 inch. And you're going to do that, like I said, 2 times. Oops, I forgot the tape on this one. And, oh, but I did bring it in. So you're going to need 2 of those, and then we're going to use 4 of these. It's going to be a little waterfall feature, and it's 4 by 4.5, 4 by 4.5, and on the 4.5 inch side, you're going to score a 1/2 inch. So when you're finished, you have a nice square flap that we're going to decorate. So you'll do that 4 times, 4 by 4.5, score it 1/2 inch on the 4.5 inch side. It's going to get installed on the left-hand side of the page. And then these 2 flaps are going to overlap each other and be installed toward the left-hand side. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to start by installing these waterfall pieces. I'm scooting the book over here on the left-hand side. So the first one's just going to go flush with the edge of the page. And by the way, this is just the insert here sticking in the pocket, if you see it. And I'm going to use my contrast sheet because I like to be able to see the very edges of my page as I'm installing features. Okay, I've got my tape ready. I'm just sitting down. So in order to get a better view of this edge, I'm going to rotate my book around so the edge that I'm working on is closest to me, closest to my eyes. I think that's a good practice to get into. The other thing you can do is stand up and lean over your book, but I think it's easier to bring the book to you than to try to bring yourself to the book. All right, get my pick tool. So here's our first one. And this is a rather, I'm gonna go ahead and take that out so I can see the actual edge of my page. This is very fun. It's going to be very fun paper. I haven't seen it in person, but I've gotten all the, at a glance and sneak peek stuff that everybody else has seen. It looks really pretty. I'm feeling a little googly-eyed this morning, so you have to be patient with me. I'm just closing it down, making sure that it's flush with the edge of the page so nothing's sticking out to grab on unexpectedly. So the next piece is going to get it here just below, and so there's this 1/2 inch hinge here, and I'm going to apply the page right under it. I'm just going to butt it right up against that. Making sure to keep it flush on the outside. You know what? I'm having a hard time this morning, so I am going to actually start using glue so that I can wiggle things into place. Some days I just have a good eye and I feel confident. Other days I struggle. Today's one of those days. So it just takes a little bit of glue, and that just gives you a moment to wiggle it in place. Or not. Okay, there's two more. Okay, and then our last one. Okay, so those 4 are in place. So that's how you're gonna see these flaps. I've got a little excess glue I'm just gonna take off with my fingernail. And again, it's the art glitter glue, so it does dry clear and matte. So a little overflow is not a bad thing. Okay, just organizing my workspace a little bit. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is put in these 2 panels, again 5.5 by 8, along the 5.5 inch side. You're going to score a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to lay down the side next to the hinge first. So I'm going to rotate that towards myself so I can see the hinge here clearly. And you're going to go to the edge of the page, steer clear of the actual hinge itself. So there's a very small space where the edge of the paper is, and then the hinge starts. So you want to be on the page side, not on the hinge side. And I should have dry fit this first, so I'm going to put my tape backing back on and make sure that it is going to fit perfectly. And it looks like it's a little bit wider than the page, so I'm going to take a slight sliver off here. It's a little bit wider. Now let's see if that does it. Yes, it does. Okay, so now I'm ready. Again, I'm going to go with the glue because I'm having a difficult time seeing this morning. So some days my allergies are just so bad it's hard to see clearly. Okay, so I'm looking to stay clear of the hinge, but I'm also wanting to keep my paper exactly lined up with the page so it's not drifting one way or the other. So there's the first of many of our flaps. So the second flap is actually going to go in the opposite way, and I'm going to dry fit it first, and it does look like I need to shave that down just a little bit, and this is going to go on the opposite side. So these 2 are going to open apart from each other. So I'm going to shave just a tiny bit off, and I noted when I sat down that somehow I got in here without tape on this one, so I'll add the tape real quick. Okay, I'm gonna check again. That's still a little too long. Time with this one too. Okay, this looks good. Okay, now it's going to go in this way. So let me add my tape. I'm going to show this to you when I'm finished. When I add my tape, because the tape isn't exactly the size of the hinge, when I apply my tape, I always want my tape to be as close to the hinge as possible, not the edge, so that when you lay it down, this side doesn't try to lift up on you. It's okay if that does. It typically won't, but you don't want this side to lift. So you want to put your tape as close to this edge as possible. the scored edge, not the trimmed, not the cut edge. Okay, so now the way this is going to go in is the hinge is going to go on this side. So I'm going to rotate this around a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and open these flaps, and I know it's going to go right against that. So I'm going to get some glue on it. And I'm looking to get it down straight, but to also have, I'm going to get my locator in here to make sure that it's even with these two sides. And maybe I will keep this closed, yeah. So now I'm going to think about this for a second. Do I really want it butted against here, or do I want a little space? Here's my last chance. And I think I'm going to put a little space in between it. So here's how I'm coming up with that space. I'm going to put this edge right against that hinge, and then that'll leave me a little strip that I can decorate in between, but then it'll allow these to move freely and not necessarily get tangled up with this flap. So I'm going to push right into the hinge across from it, come across, and lay that down, and that's it. Okay. So we'll use something to hold these down, but then that gives us a little bit more freedom to open and close this flap and open and close these flaps without there being any potential for interference there. So that is page 1. So you have a left and a right flap and then a small waterfall. So now we have to think about how we're going to keep everything closed and tidy. So I'm going to use some magnets here. And usually I like to use a nice wide tape to hold my, to cover my magnets so that they're softened, so they don't show through the paper. But I ran out of tape, so we're going to use the 3/8, which is still fine. I like to use a little bit wider tape usually because it'll go over or around the entire magnet. Okay, now we're just going to close this. And there's the placement for that magnet. Okay, so we've got a magnet to keep these closed. Now I need to decide how I want to close this. And I think what I want to do, and I haven't done it, is I think I'm going to make a small flap that goes up and holds this all in place. So there'd be a small hinge here, and it would reach across and lock in place. So I'm going to, for the meantime, go ahead and paper clip that shut. And come up with my flap real quick. And it's probably going to have, I'm guessing, a piece of ephemera. Well, sorry, I'm having a hard time reaching my paper. Here we go. I'm thinking I'll probably want an ephemera card on here to keep it all in place. So the ephemera cards are 3x4. So I think I want one horizontal, so 4 inches wide, roughly. Okay, so it'll be roughly the same width as these. So I'm going to put a hinge down here on the bottom. And then this is going to flap up. I'm going to shorten it to 1. Let's see. It has to come up at least that high. Okay. Three and a half. Okay. Let's see what this is. 5. Okay, so this is actually turning out to be 5 by 4. 5 by 4, and then we're going to score a 1/2 inch along the 5-inch side, but I'm going to set that aside for now because I don't have my scoreboard. We're going to come back to that. So for now this is finished, but I'm going to leave this paper clip in place to keep these from flopping around on us. Okay, so now we're on to page 2, and page 2 is very simple. Since page 1 is a little bit bulky, I don't want to have too much bulk on this side. So page 2 is going to be 2 flaps. And the first one is 5.5 by 7. Or actually, they're both 5.5 by 7, so you'll need 2 of those. And then you're going to score a 1/2 inch on the 7-inch side. So 5.5 by 7, 2 of those. Score at a 1/2 inch. And I have to think about this real quick. Yes, these are going to go up and down. And then on this side, we're going to have our flaps go back and forth. So these are going to be adhered directly to the top and bottom of the page. Okay, and I am going to come in. I think I want to come in about an inch. Yeah, roughly. So I'm not going to stress too much about it. It's about an inch over. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing on the top. We're going to come in from the edge about an inch. And I'm going to rotate it around so I can put this edge next to me. And that's about an inch. Okay, now we're going to use some magnets to hold these closed. Try to decide where do I want my magnet. I think I want it right here, roughly. So all I'm doing is making sure that the magnet is away from the edges, because when we put our paper down, we don't want any of the magnet exposed. Okay, there we go, plus and minus. Press it into place. There we go. Do I like that? I think so. So yeah, that's good. Okay, now on this side, we're on to page 3. So I've got a flap and a flap. So one flap is going to get installed directly to the page. Is that right? No, actually both of these are going to get installed on the center of the page. So we're going to have to wait and install these until I get my designer paper down. So what is going to happen is I am going to put the top flap on top of here, but the second flap won't get installed until I have my designer paper, because it's a floating flap. I'm actually going to cut a slit in the designer paper and slide the hinge through it. But here's what we can do. We can add this flap. So the way I want this to work is I want this flap to open to the right, and I want this flap to open to the left. So even though my writing is this orientation, it's going to go this way. So this flap is going to be centered on top of the larger flap. Right now, just making sure that they're the same size, and they are. So I want the same size strip on either side. And then what will happen is this will open to the left, and it'll close, and then the whole large flap will open to the right. Okay? And if you open it together, once I tape it down, you'll see how it extends. Okay. So this, I want it a little bit more centered, so I'm actually going to take a moment and measure. So this is 9, and this is 7. Is that right? Yes, so this is 7 by 7.5, scored at 1/2 inch. So when you're finished, you've got a 7 by 7 square, and it's going to lay right on top of this 7 by 9, and you're going to score it at a 1/2 inch. So when you're finished, you've got 7 by 8.5. So I want this centered. So I need not quite an inch on either side. So I'm going to mark that. I need 3/4 of an inch on each side. I can come back and erase that if I need to. Okay, so those are my two little tick marks. So 3/4 of an inch away from both edges. That's where the placement of the top flap is going to be. I'm going to turn it sideways because I want to make sure that these two edges are flush with these two edges. Oops. And I almost put it in backwards. It goes this way. When I say this way, you've got a flap on this side and a flap on this side. So they're opposed from each other. Does that look right? Yes, it does. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so again, once I get my designer paper, I'll lay that down. I'm going to cut a slit in it. That's where this hinge will go. It'll slide right in. And then the way the page will operate is it'll open this way and then this way. And so at the end, you've got kind of this extended flap. So I've done this before, but I usually do it up and down. I don't always do it side to side. So it's a little bit different for me this time. So it's going to go in like so. And it's just centered on the flap. It doesn't even have to be centered. You can choose to put it straight in or centered. I'll have a decorative strip here and one here, and they'll probably be the same designer paper. And then I'm going to hold this whole thing together with a magnet. And it's going to go on this side. And I'm just going to put this here as a reminder because I can't put the opposing magnet in just yet. It is going to, so I'm actually going to use 2 magnets. So I'll have one magnet that holds the large flap down to the main page, and I'm going to put another magnet over here to hold the top flap closed. And this I can actually put both in right now. So sticky it didn't want to let go. Okay, so there we go. So that'll open. It didn't stick. There we go. We'll open left, and then this will open right, and we'll have another magnet there once we get this all installed. So I'm going to use my paper clip to hold this in place. So that's the end of page 3. Pretty straightforward. Page 4 and 5 are probably the most complicated in the book. And I always like to do something big in the middle. So that's what I've done. So I'm going to go ahead and take my 2 inserts out so we're not seeing those past the edge. And I'm also going to take out page 6, 7, and 8. So I just like to keep them clipped together because it's easy to lose track. So as usual, I do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 4, 3, 2, 1 is the sequence that I design my papers in. So there's really 4 uniquely designed pages, and then the other 4 are mirrors of those pages. And then the 2 centerpieces are just mirrored directly across from each other. Okay, so what we're gonna do here, so excited, we're gonna have a deep pocket and a shallow pocket, like so. And then we're going to put some doors around those pockets. So when you open the page, you're gonna see these 2 doors, and you open it up, and then you're gonna see these 2 deep pockets. We're gonna do that on page 4 and page 5. And there really isn't much, there's no mirroring going on because of the orientation of the paper. So it's going to be an exact copy over here. So with that, I'm going to have to take a break for a moment because I'm going to have to futz around with the edges of these to make sure. I'm trying to decide if I install the pockets first or the flaps first. And I think the flaps will go in, then the pockets, but I gotta check it out and make sure if I get the flaps in that the pockets are really narrow enough to fit. And if I have to trim them a little bit, I will. And then when I come back, I'll also share with you all the measurements for each one of the components that go on the page. So there's a total of 4 components 2 flaps and 2 pockets. Okay, I'm back, and so here's what I've decided to do. So I'm going to have these 2 flaps, 5.5 by 8, that are going to open out to the left and to the right on each side of the page. So that's 5.5 by 8. On the 5.5 inch side, you're going to score it 1/2 inch. So we're going to place these 2 down. Then we're going to, inside those 2, we're going to add these pockets. Now, originally I had planned these pockets to have a fold around the edges, or a hinge around 3 of the 4 sides. But I've decided that made it too bulky in the page. So we're going to lay these down flat inside. We're just going to put a thin bead of glue around the edge when we install these. So again, I went ahead and took my flanges off. So these will be 5.5 by 10 and 3 by 10. Those are going to be the 2 pockets that are installed inside. But let's get these laid down first, and then we'll come back and add the pocket. Okay, and I'm going to rotate the book around so that this edge is next to me, the edge that I'm working on, right here. And I've got some paper clips in here that I'm going to move so that I can get the page to lay down flat. Okay. Just lining up one corner. Okay, that's in. Okay, now I'm going to rotate it around, and I'm going to focus on this side. And okay, just dry fitting one more time. As close to the hinge without interfering with it as you can get. There we go. That looks pretty darn good. Okay, so now we've got our left and right panels. And next we're going to lay in our pockets. Okay, and I'm going to lay these down and close both the flaps to make sure there's no interference. If there is, then I might need to trim just a little bit off these pockets. But let's see if we can't get it to all close nice and neat. And it does. Okay, so that looks like it's all in good working order. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and attach this small pocket to the larger pocket. And I'm going to be sure to leave a little bit of space open at the edge because I want to be able to slip the designer paper inside. Just slightly behind this flap. Okay. And for this, I'm actually going to use glue because I want as thin an attach point as possible. So again, leaving a clearance there at the top. If I can get my glue to start flowing. I'm just about out, so it's just about time to change bottles. Or maybe it is time to change bottles. Sorry about that. It was flowing earlier. There we go. All right. Okay, and then like I said, I left a little gap here at the top so I can slide my designer paper in. So now I'm going to do the same thing as I'm going to put a bead of glue around the edge, leaving a little bit of a gap at the top to slide some designer paper behind. Whoops, the whole thing slipped on me, sorry. I'm gonna hold that for a second. I may not have gotten enough glue on it, so we'll see here in just a second. But while we're waiting for that, I can show you. So now we'll have a large pocket here, and then a shallow pocket here. And our two flaps will close, or will it? I think I'm gonna have to add some more glue and slide it over a little. So I didn't get move fast enough to get it on there before it started to dry. All right, now I'm gonna be a little more generous. Is it a little too high? Okay. Okay, and I just wanted to close it to make sure that the two flaps would operate. Okay, I'm gonna hold that in place for a second and then we'll be done with page 4. And so page 5 is exactly the same thing. We'll get started on that in just a minute. Okay, now I think I'm in. Okay, so now we have to decide how we're gonna keep this closed. And I wanna think about that for a little bit. A lot of times I use magnets, but I think this would be a good place for a bow. So I might opt for that. So in the meantime, while I'm thinking about it, let's go ahead and get page 5 in, and I will use a paper clip to keep this from flapping around in our way while I think about it. Okay, so here we are. So let's dry fit our left and right flaps. That looks good. And that looks good, but I'm gonna turn it around so I can get a little bit better vantage. And then here's our two pockets that will go inside. Both these need to have a little bit trimmed off. Okay, now that's done. Whoops, I thought I grabbed it. There we go. There, that did it. Okay, now I'm going to turn it around, change my vantage point so I can see this edge here. And just disregard that this is upside down, but it's the same measurement, 5.5 by 8. Along the 5.5 inch side, you're going to score at 1/2 inch. And I labeled them all going one direction, not the direction they go in the book, so just disregard that. It's the right measurement, it's the wrong orientation. You know what, that still looks a little, no, it's okay. I was gonna say it still looks a little long, but it's not. It's a little deceiving when you're on this side because you're looking at the edge of the page, but you're also looking at the hinge, which the hinge by definition has to be smaller than the page for the page to fit around it. So sometimes it's hard for me to see whether or not I've got the right fit because can't tell if I'm looking at the hinge or the edge of the page. And there it closes beautifully as planned. Now we want to lay these two pieces in just like we did on the other side. First thing I'm going to do is lay it down and make sure I don't need to trim them anymore, that the pages will close. And if they do, and you know, see there's a bubble. I'm glad actually this happened so that I could demonstrate to you. What happens if the pocket is too wide, you get that bubble. So I'm gonna have to trim these two pieces down just a bit. And you of course wanna find that out before you glue it down. And I'm trimming off maybe a 1/16 of an inch to start. See how that goes. And I still need to trim a little more. That's fine. Let's add this piece and see if we still got, nope, this one needs to come down just a little too. Okay, now I believe everything is going to fit and the doors will close and we don't have any bubble. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to adhere the small pocket to the large pocket first and then lay everything inside of here. So this is 3 by just a little less than 10, and this is 5.5, I think. Let me double check. Yeah, 5.5 by 10. And what I did was, that was my base measurement, 5.5 by 10, and then I went and took a sliver off, and it was just under 1/8 of an inch that I wound up taking off. But you'll want to trim it to fit based on where you put your doors. So I will write in my cut instructions 3 by 10 and 5.5 by 10, and then I will add the comment trim to fit. As a reminder, don't glue it down until you've actually verified that your doors will close. And again, I had originally started out with the intent to put 1/2-inch score lines around 3 sides, but then when I laid it in, it was just too bulky. So now these are just going to be what I call a flat pocket, no gusset. And that's fine. I kind of like that. What I found with pockets is over time they get looser and looser. So if you've got a lot of space in it to start with, it's easy for things to slip in and out. Less of a problem when your pocket's up and down, more of a problem when it's side to side. Things will just want to fall out the bottom. But this should be okay. Now I'm noticing a very slight tab here, so I am going to trim that off real quick. So that it's flush the way I like it. And then again, I'm going to put glue on 3 out of the 4 sides, lay it down, and remember to leave a little space at the top because you want your designer paper to slide down. So I'm leaving myself over 1 inch. We'll come back and tack that down after we get our designer paper in. Okay, I was a little bit more liberal with the glue because last time I don't think I had enough on it. This time I think I'm good. While it's still damp, I want to close the doors to make sure it is operating. It's getting hung up a little bit over here, so try to slide it this way. Yeah, everything's functioning. Okay, I want to make sure I get up any excess glue so I don't accidentally glue my doors shut. Well, everything's in, and again, got a nice deep pocket here, and then a more shallow pocket here. So we'll have some nice, beautiful tags and photo mats that go inside that. And again, I'm not really sure how I want to keep these closed, so I'm gonna just use my clip to hold it for the moment. I'm thinking I want to do ribbon. Yeah, I think that's what I want to do here. So I'm going to leave these as such and give that, oh yeah, this has to go in after the designer paper, so I'm just going to fasten it back down. So, all right, so the next page, page 7, page 6, sorry. So again, this is the one that's going to actually get installed on top of, sorry about that, I keep bumping the camera. Move that. So this is going to open this way and then open this way. So I can put these two pieces together, but this is all going to get installed on a designer layer. So for now, I'm going to make my little tick mark so I know where I want to put it. And I think what we decided was it needed to be about 3/4 of an inch away from the edge, and that way you've got an even band on either side. Yeah. And then we'll set this inside, and then we'll get the designer paper down. We'll put a slit, and this hinge will slide right through the slit. So before I glue this down, I'll go ahead and go over my measurements again. 7 by 7.5, and you're going to score a 1/2 inch on the 7.5 inch side, so you have a nice square when you're finished. This is 9 by 7, and on the 9 inch side, you're going to score a 1/2 inch. So at the you'll have a finished panel of 8.5 by 7. And then this is going to lay in here, and then I'm going to give myself a little tick mark at 3/4 of an inch. Excuse me. Which is where I want the hinge to lay down. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Just needs to be a tick mark at 3/4 of an inch. And that'll just help me lay down this panel straight. So I'm going to check it real quick before I take my tape off. And it looks pretty good. Okay. So then, like I had mentioned in the previous one, I'll have a decorative strip on either side that matches. Okay, I'm going to turn it so that I can actually see what I'm doing. And then my goal is to make sure that these are flush here and at the top. Okay, there we go. That looks pretty darn good. Okay, again, this hinge will get applied to the designer paper when we put our designer mat in. So for the time being, I can go ahead and add my magnets, and we can just go ahead and clip it to this page until we're ready with the designer paper, which is not here yet. I can't wait. Sorry, it's Sunday, and the paper's either coming Monday or Tuesday, and I'm ready. I'm ready. You know, one of our goals is to try to have the first piece of inspiration out on new collections, and it's not an easy thing to do, but we do try, and so I think I'll have something out pretty quick, within, you know, within a few hours of actually receiving the paper, which is kind of exciting. I'm gonna move that over a little bit. Okay. Yay. So this will keep this flap closed. And then we know we need to add one more magnet to the base page, but I'm gonna put a magnet on here to remind me to find that when I get the designer paper in. Okay. And all that is going to go centered on this page. And then I'll probably put some other stuff on top of it, like a nice piece of ephemera. I haven't decided. Okay, this is a super simple page. We've got a flap that goes up and a flap that goes down. And we're going to come in, if I recall correctly from the first page, yeah, we're going to come in from the edges about an inch. That's it. Super easy. The nice thing about these floating hinges where they're not flush with 3 sides is the only thing you got to get straight is the bottom one line. You're not lining up 2 of the 3 sides, which is kind of nice. So I'm just going to use my ruler real quick and come in about an inch, which is right here. Oops. Or it was. Maybe too much coffee this morning. And that's it. Now we're going to turn it over, do the same thing And that is page 7. Our last page is page 8. And you'll recall on page 1, we've got 2 flaps and 4 waterfall features. And I always feel like the second, the mirrored copies go in so much faster because I've already done it once, right? Hopefully you feel the same. Okay, that's in about 1 inch. And we're done. So get a magnet. So I'm going to see which way. Okay, so I'm going to have it closed this way. This will be exact. This is how I did page 2, and so this is how I'll do page 7. Complete mirroring. We get 2 magnets in, and then we're off to page 8. And then, what do I want to do? It's going to go up at the top here. Now, on the other page, I actually attached it to this flap. On this page, I think I want to do this. I want to actually attach it to the base so that the magnet goes through those 2 pages. And I'm going to come back, actually, while you're all here with me and change this. I'm going to move this one. And here's why. I hate having magnets on my display page. This is I consider the top, and this is the top. And then if there's ever a bump anywhere, I want it to be someplace the least conspicuous. So I'm going to move it down a layer. And I don't know why I didn't think of that in the first place, but better late than never. All right. Let me center the magnet on the tape. There we go. And hopefully once I get all my designer paper, it'll still be strong enough, but I think so. All right, so now I'm just gonna move this flap out of the way, press it into place on the base page. All right, so now that when everything is said and done, that magnet's gonna be buried, not on top of this flap and not on top of this flap. So there we go, I like that better. Hopefully you do too. Let me get this out of the way. So that was just a slight digression, sorry about that. I'm going to use another, there we go. Things are kind of flopping around because it's not all tacked in. Okay, so that was page 7. That was super fast, right? I've got a little bit of glue here, so I'm just going to use my brush to clean things up a little bit. And now we're on to page 8. Yay, we're almost done. Okay, so left, right flap here, and then a waterfall here. And I'm going to take you back to the first one and remind you what we did. So here is our 4 flip waterfall, and then we've got this that opens like so. I'm pretty happy with this. So we'll use the same exact design on the inside. And again, we have to come back and figure something out to keep this flap closed. But I actually want to see my ephemera before I design that last piece. So we're going to do that when we get to the designer paper, which will be the next video. Okay, so I've just turned it so that I've got this edge closest to me. That is my preferred method for working. Everybody's different. So I'm just trying to get some of this paper that's floating in the background out of my field of vision so I can see my edge. I'm going to go ahead and lay a contrast piece down. There we go. And then I also want to verify that that's the top before not that it would really matter. You could do your waterfall the opposite direction if you wanted, but this is the way I designed it, so I'm going to stick with it. You're going to need 4 of these, 4 by 4.5, 4 by 4.5, and you're going to score a 1/2 inch on the 4.5 inch side. Do that 4 times. All right, and then of course we just use this hinge to line the next one up off of, being sure to stay flush with the side. Your eye will be drawn to the outside because there's no patterns or anything here. So try to keep it flush to the outside, even if it means you have to be a little bit off on the inside. One more. Whoops. I forgot to open it. I was going to actually attach it too low. Okay, everything's in. See a nice flush line here. Perfect. I'm happy with that. I'm going to use a clip to hold it in place while we work on this side. And here we go. Okay, I'm going to crank it around so I can see this edge close to me. And we're going to have one that goes left and one that goes right. Let me see if I've got tape on both. So I'm going to dry fit them first. See if I need to trim anything. And this looks good. So this hinge is going to get applied directly to the page. Steer clear of the hinge of the whole page, but go as close to the edge of the page as you can. Okay, and then we're going to use this edge. Where's my pages? So here's the edge of that hinge. So we're going to use that edge to decide the spacing for this panel. So we're going to push the outside edge or the trimmed edge of this flap right up to that, and then we're going to lay it down. That's how we're going to decide the distance. So that actually works as a good tool to make sure that we get this in straight and that we have a nice uniform 1/2 inch space on the outside, rather than just trying to eyeball placement. There we go. So that's going to go like that, if I'm correct. How do we, yeah. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, you could close it away from here. The only thing that matters is, if you like this, is magnet placement. But I'm going to go ahead and have the outside flap closed. As much as I can, whenever I have a flap next to another page, I want it to move away from the page so that there's never any chance for that. So that's kind of my school of thought when it comes to flap placement. When there's two, if it's going to close, I want it to close away from the hinge toward the outside of the book. And I'm going to do the same thing here that I just did on the other one. I'm going to put the magnet in here on the base, which I didn't do in the first one, so I'm going to go back and fix that now. So there's a couple things I may come back and do with this album after I get the designer paper and see what it looks like. There. I think that holds neater. So I think I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to take it off here and transfer it here. And sometimes it tears a little, but we know that it's going to be covered. And also I found that this, if you decide you're going to remove some double back tape or some Scor-Tape, the sooner you do it, the better. The longer you wait, the stickier it gets. I don't know how that works, but it's true. And then also it's usually pretty easy to remove off your cardstock if it's smooth cardstock. If you have textured cardstock, I would not recommend trying to move it. It has too much tooth. All right, so now instead of having it on the flap, I'm going to move this, close this flap, and then have it transfer to the base page. All right, again, then we don't have a magnet or a bump on the one of the top pages. All right, so what's left? So we have to figure out how we're going to close these two waterfalls, front and back. We do have to place page 3 and page 6 get placed after the designer papers are in. So those are two things that we'll do in the designer part. The other thing I want to do is once I get my paper trimmed out to cover all of the design elements that I have so far, I might want to come back and add some pockets and some other interesting features to different parts of the album, but I'm not sure how much paper I'm going to have because I'm doing all this design work ahead of receiving the actual paper. So I may, in the design one, come in and add some additional elements. So what would that be? Well, I might add a small pocket here, for example, and we will do that during the design phase or the designer page part of the tutorial if I decide to add that, but it really depends on how much paper I have left after I cover my current features. So that's where we are right now. We're pretty much done with all the interactive features unless I add something based on paper availability. And then again, this is for the Lost in Paradise collection with Graphic 45. I'm excited to get the paper. It should be in, today is Sunday, should be in the next day or two. And then we'll be able to finish trimming out the papers, see what we have left, and then possibly add some additional design features. And then I forgot, the last thing is we're gonna have to come up with closures for these two. And I do think that I'm either gonna use a piece of a magnetized ephemera here, which I've done in lots of my books before, or some ribbon. So I'm going back and forth on that, and I won't know until I actually get the paper in. So that's where we are. I'm so excited to get the paper in and finish this project for you guys and get some feedback from you. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We really appreciate you viewing. Thanks for spending your time with us today, and I hope you're happy with the album. I think it's it's interesting. I've not done, like I said, I haven't done this portrait style, so this is different, and I kind of like the idea that I can do these two features on a page side by side. I'm liking the format more than I thought I would, actually. So thanks for tuning in, and it'll be one more video which will lay in all the designer pieces, and you'll have your Lost in Paradise mini album. So I'm excited to be this far, and I can't wait to get the paper. And like I said, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. And if you are interested in rebuilding this album, be sure to give us a chance. Take a look at our shop at www.scrapandcreate.com. We offer these bundles, which I think are a great deal, and you get all this content free. And when you shop at our shop and watch our YouTube channels, it goes a long way to helping fund projects that we put out here for you. So give us a chance. We try to be as competitive as possible on shipping and product price. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll be back soon with the rest of this album. Bye.